our agenda here, we'll talk a little about course logistics, where to find the classes and all that good stuff. We'll review some basics as far as metrics and information about metrics. Talk about collecting those metrics. Come on, slide, come back. All right, one more time. Here we go. All right, collecting those metrics, analyzing those metrics. And we're going to do a lab where we are going to collect host metrics. So we're going to bring in host metrics that we can work with, and we'll analyze some of those metrics and play with those metrics. Then we'll talk about various use cases, and we'll basically do the labs based on those use cases. Then we'll talk about monitoring some metrics. Like I said, after about 2 hours of lecture and labs, and by the way, there's 11 labs, although the 11th lab is basically cleaning up from the previous 10 labs. So there's 11 labs, if you will. And like I said, we'll spend the next 2 hours on lecture and labs. And then after that, you've got an exam. And as I mentioned to the folks that came a little early, this exam is, in my opinion, one of the toughest ones. So please, like I said, pay attention. Please feel free to get a hold of the slides. Feel free to, and I'll show you where those are. You know, if you get stuck someplace when we're proctoring the exam, feel free to ask us. Our goal is to help you. Okay, so one other thing we want to encourage you to do, again, if you take the class now and you take the exam right afterwards, right? You pass the exam, you can send that a copy of your certificate to training@sumologic.com and let us know what email address to send the voucher back, and we'll send you an Uber Eats voucher for $15. Now, keep in mind that right now we're running lots and lots of classes concurrently with lots of folks, and we are getting inundated with those emails. So it could take a day or two for us to get back to you on those vouchers. But please take the exam, pass the exam. By the way, if you don't pass it, you can take it again immediately or take it whenever you want. But take it, pass it. Feel free to submit the your certificate, a copy of your certificate for that voucher. And I'll show you where you can see your certificate and all that good stuff later as we go. Okay. So send it to training@sumologic.com. All right, come on. And on top of that, we have another neat certification giveaway. And that is, we used to have just 6 certifications. And this is one of the 6. But in this Illuminate, we've added 4 more certifications. So we've added an AWS Observability Fundamental certification. We've added an AWS Observability Administration certification. We've added a Cloud SIEM Fundamental certification and a Cloud SIEM Administration certification. So we now have 10 certifications that you can take. If you pass 6 of those certifications, again, there's some information here upside down on the form here. Hang on, my slides like to slip. That you can provide the shipping information on a link that we have for form. And again, feel free to post the backpack with you wearing your backpack on LinkedIn. And like I said, we'll gladly ship you a backpack. So I'm sorry, let me put this in the right order. You know, let us know that you passed the Sumo 6. We'll verify it. We'll send you the backpack. Do a selfie or something and put it on LinkedIn about the Sumo 6, and everybody wins. So you want a cool backpack? Another great opportunity. So let's talk about metrics. What are metrics, right? They are data points that typically measure the value over something over time, right? So I want to see, in fact, one of my favorites in here is the 3rd bullet point, the height of your child every 6 months, right? We line them up against the wall, we put a little tick mark there, right? Maybe a little competition between the kids. Who knows if they're twins? I have twins, so there was a little competition. You know, your weight every week? Nah, I don't think so, but that's good. The point is that these are everyday metrics that we care about. One of my personal favorites, my checking account balance every week, right? Make sure we're not in the Hertz locker there, all right? Measurement of temperature on an hourly basis. There are a whole slew of metrics within a company regarding your system environments, regarding if you're in a manufacturing environment, maybe your RPMs and speed of things, process and how long things are taking, temperature, salinity, all of that fun stuff. Lots and lots of metrics. And why do we want these metrics? Well, we can use these metrics as key performance indicators, KPIs that we can gain visibility into how we are doing, right? Most companies now have a service level agreement, an SLA, where they have said, we will respond to things, we will resolve things within a certain period of time. That's a KPI, that's a key performance indicator. And you're obviously can be measured on how am I doing with regard to that service level agreement. And so KPIs are typically measured across companies in all kinds of different areas. You know, certainly in an accounting organization, finance, marketing, how effective is our marketing programs? Like I said, your IT, my systems, how they up, they down, that sort of thing. And of course, you know, all the other aspects that typically is something you want to measure. The other thing is also with our observability solution, which you probably heard about today, you'll hear more about tomorrow. You know, you can use metrics to help you understand what's going on and hopefully use some of our additional tools like the root cause explorer and other things to investigate as to why it's happening and so that you can resolve it faster and quicker. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay. All right. So metrics versus logs. Again, we have all kinds of different things here. You know, when we think most people think of Sumo logic, they think in terms of we deal with logs, we deal with metrics. Well, no, we deal with observability now, we deal with security. So it's more than that. But with regards to logs, is it a log or is it a metric, right? Typically, in order for it to be a metric, it's something I got to be able to measure, and it's typically something over time. So if I talk about a particular failed login, that's going to be a log entry. That's not going to be a metric. If I want to see my CPU uptime for the last 15 minutes, or maybe my CPU utilization for the last 15 minutes, that's a metric, right? Every time a wind exceeded 20 knots, probably more of a log event, except if I keep track of what my wind speed is, that would be a metric. So again, it's real easy to see what our logs, what our metrics, and more importantly, you'll find that in this class, we can actually take data from our logs and we can bring it in as metrics if we want to. Now, I'm also going to mention something else to you. Again, when people work with Sumo, they ingest lots and lots of data. And they, typically we charge based on the level that they ingest and the different partitions and all the different levels of data they ingest. But with that, they typically get a number of data points per minute. That's what we refer to metrics. And a lot of companies, many companies, in fact, I dare say if you checked your own company, you are probably underutilizing the amount of metrics that you have available to you. And so this is an area that I think you can take great advantage of, and I would encourage you to do so. Now, with Sumo logic, obviously, we need to be able to search our metrics, get our metrics. Well, this starts with data collection. So in Sumo logic, we have collectors and we have sources. Collectors are the Java app or thing that's going to encrypt, compress, and send our data to the Sumo logic cloud environment. So the collectors encrypt, compress, and send. That's what they do. What they send as far as log data, metric data, that sort of thing, those are sources. So or later on in the class, we're going to install and set up a collector. And then we're also going to set up a source to bring in our metric data, if you want, into the Sumo Logic Cloud. And then you can see your system's performance to see how it's doing. And we can compare it with other metric data that we might have here. But your sources are the individual sources, your metrics. Maybe you've got a CloudTrail log that you want to bring in, or AWS specific logs that you want to bring in. Maybe you've got web server logs. Those are sources. And once we got this data in, then we want to be able to search and analyze. And in our case, the focus of our class is focusing on searching and analyzing using metrics. So we want to sit there and use our metrics here. And then we can, like I said, build visualizations, build graphs, charts, things like that based on our data. And then we can take those charts and we can add them as a query or as a panel into our dashboards. So we can build out our dashboards if we want to. We can also create alerts. So in this class, we're going to be focusing on actually all three of these. We're going to show you how to set up a collector, set up a source, build a query, and basically set up alerts. We're not going to focus too much on dashboards, but we can if you need to. As far as collecting metrics, like I said, you're either going to have a hosted collector if you're on the cloud, going to have a hosted collector, which is out there, that's something that we maintain. You don't have to worry about it. Or you're going to have an installed collector. Now, installed collectors is a little lightweight Java app, and it comes in all kinds of different varieties for different operating systems. And you could install a collector on each one of the machines that you want to grab sources from. Okay. Or if you want to, you can also provide a consolidated or centralized collector so that these other machines can forward their logs or their metrics or whatever to this machine. And again, remember what a collector's job is designed to do: encrypt, compress, and send. So it will do that. By the way, these collectors are little lightweight Java-based applications, and they typically take less than 1% of your CPU and less than 1% of your memory. So they're not big and straining at all. So Thomas asked a question: is there a benefit of one over the other? Actually, there is, and we typically do talk about this more in the admin class. But if you've got a lot of logs, a lot of data and stuff like that, then you're probably going to want to set up separate collectors. But if you're, got not a whole lot of logs, data, or metric data, you can set up a consolidated collector. The other thing is, if these machines don't have access to the internet, that's another way to go. So there are some benefits. And like I said, we get more into it in the normal administration class, the core administration class. Okay. So here we have a slide of various hosted collectors, various installed collectors. And as I said, later on, we're going to have an exercise where if you want to, you can install a collector on your local computer. And we're going to define a metric source on your local computer that can send metric data to us. Okay. By the way, I'm really having sympathy for the person that's coughing. I know what that's like, and that's no fun. So anything we can do for you, please let us know. As far as metric ingestion and storage, if you bring in data for us, metric data, we're not going to take any metric data that's more than a week old. So we want fresh data, right? And then we're going to retain it for a certain period. So as the data comes in, various, CPU data, network data, whatever kind of data you bring in the raw, we're going to retain that raw information for 7 days. And then at 1 minute intervals and at 1 hour intervals, we will calculate the min, the max, the average, the sum, and the count. And at that 1 minute resolution, we will keep that for 30 days. So if I'm looking at doing a query over 30 days, I can look at within a minute of what's going on. And then my 1 hour resolution, we keep for 13 months. So over the course of a year, I can look back at your metric values at hour intervals. And we find that for a lot of customers, this works very, very well. They can see the information they want. We're not retaining a lot of data. Therefore, there's not a lot of, not a lot of overhead costs here or anything like that. Like I said, it works out very, very well. This is our metric ingestion and storage. By the way, this makes a really good couple of questions. So those of you into screenshotting, you probably want to screen capture this. Also, here in a minute, I'm going to show you where you can get these slides. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked, is there a way to force data more than a week old? Notes, do you want to change your retention period, Thomas? Is that your question? So if you want to change your retention period, you can talk to your account team on that. Okay. By the way, before I get too far down the road, we talk about analyzing metrics and we get into things. Let me point out a couple of things that might be handy to you. First of all, here in the Illuminate portal that we're in right now, if you go down to resources and you click on resources, and here in your resources, if you filter by training, you'll see here's a list of all of our slides that we're providing, the training that we're doing over today and tomorrow. And you'll find that here is the slide deck for the metric exam, becoming a Sumo metric analyst. So this is a place where you can get a hold of the slides for this class. When you take the exam, it is open book, open notes, open documentation, open slides. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. I'm also going to show you another resource that you're going to have. Actually, I'll do it right now. Actually, no, I'll hold until we get involved in the Sumo logic environment. So just bear with me. Okay. Okay. Again, Thomas, you're asking about, suppose we omitted something, and you add it later. Again, we won't take it more than a week old. So you want to backfill some data. I'll let Stacy answer that question if you don't mind. So as far as analyzing metrics here and dealing with metrics, we typically look at metrics in a key value pair format, right? So I might have the word metric, and then my specific value of my metric, right? CPU utilization, CPU idle, disk drive activity, whatever. I might have another key value pair, region, and my values might be US, EU, certain continents, and things like that. So we typically can use these key value pairs to provide us the information that we want. So if we have 255 stations across Spain, if we say I want to see the metric of wind speed, the region of EU, and the country of Spain, I will see all 255 stations. Now, if I want to see only the 3 stations in Valencia, if I add another key value pair, focusing this for the city of Valencia in the country of Spain, I'll see only those 3 values. And then I can also put various operators and functions in there, like I want to see the average of those 3 things to get a single value. Or I want to see the average of my country, Spain. I could put in a pipe and then the word average here. And then I would see only one value, the average of my 255 stations. So we've got a lot of flexibility here, and you'll see that when we actually go into the tool. Now, we've got a whole bunch of metric operators that we can use, and those are separate from the log operators. So here I am going to stop for just a second, and I'm going to go into our product documentation. Lots of ways to get there. My personal favorite is I like typing it in. I like typing the URL, help.sumologic.com. That's how to get to our documentation. And here is our documentation. Okay. For those of you who had the search mastery class, hopefully you learned in the search chapter that there is some search cheat sheets here. And here in these search cheat sheets, we have the log search operator cheat sheets. So here are the log operators, not the metric operators, but the log operators. And there's a PDF version. Now, my metric operator cheat sheets are in the metrics chapter. So if I go into the metrics chapter and I look into introduction to metrics and I continue to look into this, or I can also wimp out and do a search for metric operators. And there it is. There's my metric operators. So here are the operators we use when we're building a metric query. Now, I don't know how many of you have been involved with Sumo for a while, but about a year ago, we had a different type of metric editor. And the feedback we got from our customers wasn't exactly raving. They said it's too complicated. The queries were too hard to type and create and all that sort of thing. So you're going to find that about a year ago, we switched to our new Metric Explorer, and we made the interface very simple. And we also made it very powerful. So if you're not sure how to create a metric query, you can be in basic mode and just drop and select the values that you want, or you can go to advanced mode if you're familiar with how to create a metric query, and you can do that. Again, here in my metric operators, there's a metric cheat sheet PDF version that you or I can print out and put next to your computer. So when you want to play with these metric operators, you certainly can. Okay. And if anybody is curious, I'm going to take this lovely thing, this URL, and I will paste it in here for you. Okay. All right. So those are our metric operators. One other thing I want to mention to you, and that is in the first chapter under Start Here. Under Start Here, we've got a bunch of different subtopics here. One of them is our Quick Start labs and tutorials. And here in our Quick Start labs and tutorials for our original 6 certification classes, we have the labs for those classes. And so if I look down here, I see there's a hands-on labs metric mastery. And here are the 11 labs that we are going to do. So again, I'm going to copy this URL and I'll paste it in the chat box for you, so that you can have those labs, and you're going to want to have access to those labs. So I'm going to go ahead and pin those labs down so that they're available to me and I can see them at any time I want. Okay. But I wanted to show you some of the nice resources that we've got. Now, one other thing, while I'm giving you the grand tour here, let me go back to help.sumologic.com in a new tab. This time I'm going to click on community. This is our community where our customers and us get together and integrate and collaborate and discuss ideas, and where people provide feedback on enhancement requests and all that sort of thing. So this is our Sumo Logic community that us, our partners, and you all can access and share. You're looking for code examples? Look on the community. Now, in the case of the community, if I search for slides, SLIDES, I see that I get 2 responses. Where it says training and certification, labs, webinars, and slides, if I click on that, here is our original 6 certification classes, and we'll be adding the other 4 here very shortly, where we have a link to our labs for each of these classes, a recording of each of these classes, and the slides for these classes. So this is the one-stop shop. If you want to take any of our classes, or if you don't have time to take the classes, you want to listen to them, do the labs, that sort of thing, it's all right here. So I'll paste that little rascal right in there as well in the chat box, just so you've got it. Also, you'll notice we've got some workshops and stuff in here. Like I said, we'll add the other 4 certification classes in here very soon. But I wanted to give you some resources, okay? Our goal is to make you successful. We'll do it any way we can. All right. So anyway, back to the slides. Okay. What we'd like you to do is we want you to log in. Now, because we're going to install a collector and we're going to install a source, we need to log in as administrators. Okay. So you're going to log first, you're going to fire up a Google Chrome or Firefox browser, and you're going to go to service.sumologic.com. Many of you have had other certification classes today. You've been logging into this environment. The only caveat here is this time you're going to log in as training plus admin with a 3-digit number at sumologic.com. So my next ask of you is I'd like each of you to pick a 3-digit number, anywhere from 001 to 999, and type it in the chat box if you would, so you can make sure things are somewhat unique. By the way, I am going to take 603. Why 603, you ask? That's the area code of New Hampshire. So the whole state has one area code. We're not that big, which works for me.
It's going to be changing.
Oh, it is?
Okay. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay, well, that's not good news. All right. Anyway, so a lot of new t-shirts have got to be made, but that's another story. So I'm going to take 603. I am surprised in this class and my other classes so far, nobody's taken 007, but hey, whatever. So what I want you to do is go to service.sumologic.com, take your 3-digit number and put it in here. So you're logging in as an email of training plus admin with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the password is right now, currently capital SUMO 2021 exclamation mark. Sumo 21. And if I know Stacy, she has pasted this stuff in there. So let us take a look and let's log in. So here I am in my web browser, service.sumologic.com, brings me to this lovely login page, only I don't want to log in with my account. I want to log in a training plus admin. Now, because we are setting up some collectors and sources, that's the only reason we need the admin privileges here, okay? And I'm not sure how many of you worry about setting up collectors and sources, but we're going to do that in this class. And if you want to know more about collectors and sources, I encourage you to come back and take the administration class.
Some of them have. They were there with us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And again, the password here, and let me change this little icon so you can see when I'm typing. The password is Sumo 2021 exclamation mark. And I want you to know this password changes every month, typically on the first Monday of the month. That's when we change it. I do not know yet what the October password is. I won't know until we change it. But if you need to, you can always send me an email and I'll gladly tell you what the password is. So one of the things I will put in here is my contact information. So if you've got questions 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, and you're not sure who to reach out to, you can reach out to me. I'll gladly do everything I can to try to help you. Okay. Stacy, yeah, Stacy points out the admin and the user passwords are very different here. And that's absolutely true. So for those of you logged in earlier, you logged in maybe as a Training Plus analyst with a 3-digit number. This is Training Plus admin. So great observation. And I click on sign in and I'm in. And what I would like you all to do is I'd like you all to sign in. And so I'd like you to sign in. When you're signed in, I'd like you to raise your hands. That way I know that you're in. So when you get logged in, just raise your hands or a thumbs up. Either one works. Some sort of a lovely positive indicator here. Okay. And it looks like I've got about 10 folks who are in out of 29. So hopefully those numbers get a little bit better. More importantly, if you're having problems logging in, let me or Stacy know, and we will help you out. If you get a message,
first-time users can find this a little rough, so I'm happy to help.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're having any problems or something, let us know. We will gladly try to help you. Okay. Yeah, some of you are just along for the ride. I get that. You know, not everybody, I don't expect everybody to log in. Okay. And I realize that some of you are probably being disrupted by your day job. And I'm sorry, I feel your pain and I understand. But the point is, those of you who are logged in, certainly want to make sure I don't leave anybody behind. All right. So it looks like we've got about 6 people or so logged in, and I'll go ahead and go with that. So if you would, go ahead and lower your hands, clear that stuff up. And by the way, Stacy, one of the things I noticed in this morning's class was I didn't have the ability to lower hands in the Zoom. So that's something we missed.
I'll give it a try and see if I've got that permission.
Yeah, I don't have it. So, but something we missed on our checks the other day. So, all right. So, first of all, you notice I've got a bunch of tabs here. The last person that logged in left these tabs up. The last person was me. I could close these tabs one at a time, as probably most of you know, but I can also click on this 3 vertical dots, which I refer to as the more action button. Some people refer to it as the kebab. You can click on that and you'll see you have an option to close all the tabs. So there you go. You close all the tabs and we are in like Flint here. Okay. And so from here, we can go ahead about our daily way there. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that being said, what I want to do here is I want to focus a little bit about metrics and playing around with metrics. But first, let me let me ditch the slides for right now. Let's talk about metrics. So if we want to create a metric query, we can either click on this lovely orangish icon, or we can click on new and click metrics. Now, when you bring up the Metrics Explorer, as I said before, one of the complaints or feedbacks we got from our customers was your metric interface was too complicated, too hard to use. And we took it to heart. We revamped it and everything else. Now, when you come in here to this metric query, if it says enter a metric query like mine does, it means that you're in, forgive the double quotes, the air double quotes, but you're in advanced mode. And you can switch by clicking on the kebab out here back to basic mode. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to make it easy for people to pick metrics. Okay. So here I can click on metric and I can see a long laundry list of metrics here that I could use. And if I wanted to, I could start typing something in like CPU, and then I could see all the stuff that begins with CPU. And I could grab in CPU load average 15 minutes. I'm just going to grab a specific metric here. CPU load average 15 minutes, this one right here. And I'm going to select it. And if I click away with no filters, and if I click over here to run this query, it's going to show me a bunch of metrics. Now on my preview table, I have 455 metrics here that I can see. And I could go through each row and figure out which instance, which system, which whatever it's from. By the way, if I want to change the time frame here, by default, I'm looking at 15 minutes. I could change it to something more complicated or something more involved, 6 hours, whatever. I can change that. But what most people do is rather than looking at the preview table, they look at the chart. And so if I look at this chart, and actually, let me make it less than 6 hours. Let me make it back to my 15 minutes, because you can see that looks like a heck of a display there. Okay, let's go back to 15 minutes here.
Digital art.
Yes, exactly. So here we have the Spaghetti Factory. And again, a great restaurant, but the old Spaghetti Factory. But here we can see our CPU load average time every 15-minute interval here. And we can see, how things are going. And we got data all over the place. Now, what's kind of cool about this is down here, I have a legend. And I can click on that legend and I can filter and select specific values here if I want. Or again, I can turn it off and see all of my values. So your legend is not only a legend, but it's a selector where you can specify and select things. In fact, when I make this to a dashboard, my users can use that legend the same way. So you and I can create a query here and look at some data, right? Now I can also filter this data, and I can filter it by metadata tags. I can filter it by my collector name or my source name or whatever the heck I want. So I'm going to pick source name here just for fun. And here I'm going to grab Apache Host Metrics, and I'm going to go ahead and rerun this. So I can filter, and I'm looking at my Apache Host Metrics here. And as I put my cursor along the line, I get a tooltip of what value and what things I'm seeing. Now, again, I'm only looking for a specific metric. If I got rid of this and I put a star in here, I could see all of my Apache Host Metrics. So we tried to make it very easy in this basic mode to be able to pick and choose what you want. Now let me go back to, again, my CPU load average 15 minutes. Let me get rid of this filter. So I'm back to my old Spaghetti Factory here. And one of the things I might want to do is, I don't want to see all of this individual data. Maybe I want to see the average of this data. So I can add an operator like average, and I can do an average by source name, source type, or whatever. But I'm not going to specify that. I'm just going to say average, period. And so now I'm seeing the overall average of my metrics. This is a pretty simple interface to use. So based on our customers' feedback, I'd say we did a very nice job of improving this interface and making it very useful. Now, I may be biased because I work for Sumo Logic, but I do believe this is true. Okay. Now, also down here, we made it very easy as part of our new dashboards where I can look at a time series and I can use a line, or I can use a bar chart, or I can use a column chart, or whatever I want. And I can pick my color schemes and all that sort of stuff. I can also make this some sort of a pie chart or a donut chart with one value that probably doesn't make a great deal of sense. But obviously, if I got rid of my average and reran it, now I'm looking at all those different hosts and things. I can also display a honeycomb chart. Shows me, again, my different honeycombs here of different values. And I can even set it up so that I can conditionally format them. A value range of, say, 0 to 80% is in the green. Anything from 81 to 90 is in yellow, and anything above 90 is red. So you can very easily conditionally format this. So we got a lot of power, a lot of flexibility here. Okay. And I hope that, works for you. I know it certainly works for me. Now, depending again on what options I choose, I've got a bunch of other things here that I can play with, that I can see, that I can do. Most importantly, I can also access the underlying JSON. So for those of you who have certain color standards, certain things that you want to do, you can directly access the JSON and change your color schemes and things like that. I can control my legend. I can control my axes, what I want on my left axis. Do I want it to be dual axes, a left axis, a right axis? You know, what do I want on those? I can override and all kinds of fun stuff that we're going to play with. So just kind of wanted to show you the power of metrics in this new interface. Questions so far? All right. So let's focus on the labs, and let's start off with installing a collector. So here we are in Metric Mastery, Lab 1. Again, hopefully you've got that URL. It was in the chat box. And so we're going to download a collector package, and we're going to install a collector. So now, many of you, if you don't have the rights or permissions to install something on your computer, your work computer, you don't have to do this. Okay, I'm going to do this so you can see how it works. But we're going to go through and install some software on our computers so that we can send our host metric data into Sumo. So again, it wants us to go into Sumo Logic. I need to get this out of my way. Close that up. Good. Let's pin this over. Thank you very much. Let me kind of pin this so it's easy to grab. And so what I want to do per the directions, I want to go in here to manage data. I want to go to collection. And here are all of the collectors we have in the training environment. And I want to add a collector. Now, if you're on the cloud, it would be a hosted collector. My machine is not on the cloud. It's going to be an installed collector. So we want to choose an installed collector, and then you want to pick, based on your operating system, the type of collector that you want. I happen to be on a Mac, so I will download the Mac collector. Again, you can download the Windows. Hopefully you're all running 64-bit machines by now. But if you're running a 32-bit machine.
John, we have a question that I'm not sure we can address in this class, but that's around metrics from CSE. I know in the Cloud Sim admin class, we take a look at logs from CSE, but I'm not sure about metrics.
Good question. I'm not sure either, but I think we can, because I know we obviously plot those as far as dashboards and stuff like that. So Kevin, it's a great question. Thanks for asking.
I'll go ahead and reach out to the Cloud Sim team. You guys forge ahead. And then Shreyas, the question is serious about editing JSON inside of Sumo?
Well, I mean, you can edit. I'm sorry. You would actually edit it outside of Sumo. You could export it, copy it, edit it, and then import it back in if you want.
Cool.
But you could actually.
Sorry, I felt like I was slow on the uptake, but we've been doing classes since 4 a.m. my time, so maybe I was.
I think we're all a little worn here, so forgive us, guys. It's been a long day. All right. So we're basically back here to lab number 1. We have downloaded our collector package. We said we're going to grab and install the collector, and then we want to run this collector setup wizard. Okay. And so we're going to go ahead and set up our collector. Now, again, here is my file. I'm going to open up this file, and I am going to double click on this file, and it says, oh, it can't be installed. This is a nice feature from Apple. It says, we can't let you install this. And I'm going to click OK. And then in Apple land, I'm going to go to my system preferences. And here in my system preferences, under security and privacy, Apple has prevented me from installing this. So Sumo Logic is blocked because it doesn't know who Sumo Logic is. I'm going to tell it to go ahead and open it anyway. And I'm going to tell it to go ahead and open. So I'm basically saying, I know this software vendor. It's okay. Good to go. Go ahead and open it up. And so now it will start the installation process for me. Forgive the dog barking in the background. Obviously, some sorry about that. Pay no attention to the dog in the background. Anyway, so I have to log in. I have to type in my password here to get past this. So bear with me a second. As you can see, we at Sumo Logic take passwords very seriously. Okay, and this will start my installation setup. So I'm going to go ahead and click next, accept the agreement, next, and it's going to start to install it. Now I've already got a collector on here. It's going to install my previous collector. It's going to install my previous collector, and it's going to install the new collector. Yes. Yes to all. Okay. And so now we can click next here. And that I expected that. The first time, for whatever reason, we run this on these Macs, it gives us a fit. So I'm going to tell it to quit. And then I'm going to run it again. It should run clean this time. I have to admit, it's been about 3 weeks since I've installed the collector. So, and I know I've gone through a major update on my Mac operating system. So just bear with me. Okay. All right. So we'll do this again, this time with feeling. And this time it should come across clean. All right, good. So basically, here's my information about my system. I can go here into advanced settings if I want to and change some of these various settings. But by default, the collector's job is to compress, encrypt, and send. So here, for example, in my proxy, I can tell it we're using a proxy. I can tell it to use the default URL. I could override it if I want to. I can have it install sources if I want to, or I can have it run as a different account than, say, maybe my account. So these are some of the settings that are there. I don't need to change any of these. I'm just going to go ahead and click next. Now, it wants an access key so it can encrypt and create stuff and send it to Sumo. So we can either use a token or an access key. And right now we're just going to go ahead and use an access key. And where we get that access key is if I go back here to my Sumo Logic environment, and if I'm logged in right here in my account, and if I click on this, and by the way, if your navigation pane was not open, if you click on Sumo Logic or the hamburger menu, and then you go down here and you click on your name, it will then open it up and you can click on preferences. And here is where you can add an access key. So I'm going to click on add an access key. I'm going to give it a name. And again, if you're following along, you'll need to do this as well. I don't need to worry about putting this on some sort of an allow list. My computer can get to Sumo just fine. It's not blocked or anything like that, so I don't need to worry about that. I can click on create key, and here is my access ID, and here is my access key. So if I copy this, and I select access key here, and I click next, I can paste in my access ID. I can copy my access key. I can paste that information in. When I click next, it's going to try to establish a secure connection with Sumo Logic. Come back to that in a second. One thing, this is the only time you're going to see the access key. So if your company has a policy that says anytime you create access IDs and access keys, you need to save them someplace in a password manager, then that's what you need to do. Because once I click done, even though I see it down here, and even though it looks like I can edit it, I only see the access ID. I never see the access key. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, this connected to my Sumo Logic environment. So we're able to encrypt the data and send it back and forth to Sumo from this collector. I now click finish. My collector is set up. Lab 1 is now complete. Any questions? Interesting, Beth. Okay. Yeah, somebody asked who let the dogs in or out. Yeah, no, somebody's walking their dog and Max went nuts. So yes, that's Max. All right. So now moving on to lab 2, we've got our collector created. Now we need to create our source. So we're going to go find our collector. So remember, we named our collector. And so I'm going to go into Sumo Logic where it says here in the main menu under Manage Data, under Collection, and I am going to find my collector. And I believe I used my initials in here somewhere when I created that collector. And as you can see, I have been very, very busy creating collectors. And I need to clean a lot of this stuff up. It was for some of the classes we were doing today and tomorrow. But this client JWM is the collector that I just installed. Okay. And so this client JWM, what I want to do here is I want to add a source. So I'm going to click Add Source, and then I can add local files, local log files, remote log files, sys logs, all kinds of stuff. What we want to do in lab 2 is we want to add a host metric. And so here in our host metric, I'm going to click on host metric, and I get to give this thing a name. And again, the name is there for whatever reason. I mean, it's just something I can reference, but it's the source. What we really want you to do is under source category, we want you to give this thing a meaningful name. So I'm going to do something like host metrics /JWM, my initials. And if I look at lab 2, that's what it wants us to do. Host metrics and your initials. Then it also wants us to specify the scan interval. Now, I'm going to be a glutton for punishment. I'm going to tell it to grab data off my machine every 10 seconds. And I'm going to check mark everything. I want to put a lot of data in here. And by the way, if you open up any of these fields, you can see all the different things you can grab, and there's tooltips here as far as what those things mean. But I'm going to grab all kinds of metric data here. And when I click Save, now, lo and behold, I have defined my source, and now I should start bringing that data in. So here is my source. I can and should be able to click on this, and I should start seeing, when I run this after a little while, my data coming in, my host metric data coming in. Might take a minute or two for it to get here. Okay. Patience is not one of my strong virtues. By the way, just for fun, I'm going to replace that JWM with a star. By the way, this does not need to be in double quotes since there's no spaces. So here I'm looking at various host metrics that are coming in. And I can see all the different little host metrics. So some of you might have added your host metric in here if you're doing the lab 2 with me. Let me try to put my initials in here and see if it's going to show me some data now. There we go. See, I'm starting to get some data from my computer. So my computer here in Bedford, New Hampshire, is sending data to the Sumo environment, which is on an AWS environment, I think on US East 1, somewhere, Virginia, whatever. So, and that's where I'm able to see it. So again, as I refresh this, I'll start seeing more data. Any questions about bringing data into Sumo, host metric data and the like? Okay, excellent. So that takes care of lab 2. And the excitement continues to build. Now, since we got data coming in from a known source, we can start querying things, okay? we can start looking and querying our data. And this is where the lab starts talking about the difference between basic and advanced mode, which we'll actually get into a little bit later. But they want me to go ahead and grab that CPU load average 15 minutes. And they want to see that good old fashioned spaghetti factory here. Okay. So again, I did this earlier. Again, a new metric query, type CPU load average 15 minutes. Don't specify a filter, run it. There we go. I can click on chart and I see my lovely spaghetti factory. Okay. If I wanted to here, so let's see what the question is. Hey, Jared, that's good to know. Jared mentions his initials are also JWM, so I thought I'd put my Sumo lab for somehow putting my initials in those steps. No, sir, that's all me. Sorry about that. I guess we're distant cousins. So we have the same initials. All right. So now that I've got data coming in here, known data and stuff like that, I can now start playing around. And I talked about this before, right? So I can sit there and look at my CPU load average. And if I want to here, maybe I want to take an average of this information. So I've got an average of this information of all these sources coming in, and there's my average, my CPU load average. If I want to, and again, I want to make sure I'm in basic mode where I have these drop downs, metric equals, filter equals, operator. Again, I can, add these drop downs. And then this plus sign over here lets me add a second query. And so in my second query, I can type in CPU load average, again, 15 minutes. Only this time I can say, you know what, I want the source category to be, and notice when I click on source category, I see a whole bunch of drop downs here. And so I'm going to grab my host, my machine, and I'm going to run that. So now I can see here's the average of everybody's data, and here's my average, or here's my 15-minute load average. And so I can quickly see that I'm running below average, which actually probably makes sense. Most of these environments are AWS environments. They're going to run hotter, doing more load than my little Mac computer, right? But the point is now I can compare things if I want to. I can see how specific sources and hosts and data and stuff are doing. I can filter it down to see the stuff that I want. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And we can build the queries to do that. So again, here in step 6, I'm seeing my computer versus the average. I did it in the other order, but it's all about the same. Of course, I don't have enough data yet to fill up my screen. I don't have 15 minutes worth of data, but I will. Just give it a little bit of time. So we're just trying to play around here and poke around here. Any questions so far? I'm going to take that as a no. So again, if you got questions, please ask. Now in lab 4, rather than writing a bunch of queries, the best query you can write is the one you don't have to write. And so for those of you who are familiar with Sumo Logic, we've got this lovely app catalog. And in this app catalog, we have about 200 applications that we have written queries and stuff for. So, for example, many of your companies probably use Zoom, right? And so in Sumo Logic, I can find the Zoom app. I can preview the dashboards and I can see the kind of information I can get from my Zoom environment. I can see who's having meetings, how long these meetings are lasting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All kinds of nifty reports. Do you have to write any of these queries? No, they're all done for you. Could be metric queries, could be log queries, but it's all pretty much done and canned for you. You can install these applications. And again, there's a whole bunch of apps, AWS observability apps, all kinds of apps that you can install here. If I do a search for host, you'll see here I've got a host metric app. And that is in lab 4 what they want us to do. They want us to install this host metric app. So I'm going to click on this host metric app. Again, it shows me kind of some of the dashboards here. I can preview those dashboards if I want. to see the kind of information that it's going to give me. And then I want to add it into my library, into my personal library here. So I'm going to click add to library, and I can call it anything I want. We recommend that when you install apps that you put your initials there. Okay. Even though it's going to go into your personal folder of the account that you're logged into, it's much easier to find if you put your initials in there. And then the other thing we want to do is under the source category, we can decide what data we want to bring in here. So my source category is going to be host metrics / my host. Now I could say host metrics / star, and that will be all of the hosts that start with host metrics. Or I could flat out put a star in there. So you can have this app deal with one host, many hosts, whatever you want. Do it by department, however you got things organized. I'm going to follow the directions, which I'm sure it puts my man card in question, but that's another story. And you'll notice if I click on advanced, it's going to put it in my personal folder. And I'm going to click add to library. And so now this is going to add this application to my personal library. And I can go in here and I can see my host metric overview dashboard. And there's my data as it starts to come in, and I can see how things are behaving, how my CPU is behaving, things like that. I could go into my disks and see my disk performance. So I can see the performance of my disk drives. I could look at my memory and all that fun stuff. Point is, these apps are already pre-built for you. They can save you lots of time. If you needed to modify one of these apps for whatever reason, you could go in and you can modify it, edit it, and then resave it if you want to. But the bottom line is we want to make it easy for you to get up and running. And these apps will hopefully get you somewhere between 70 and 90% of where you need to be. Okay. And that, folks, is pretty much Lab 4. Now, one thing they do talk about here is the classic metric interface versus the new metric interface. And I'll be honest with you, it's probably time for us to take this away. But let me deal with this. I believe in the directions. They want us to go into host metric overview. And in this particular panel right here, they want me to open this up in my metric search. Now, this is our old metric interface. It looks a bit different than this metric interface, right? Good news. It's easy to switch these metric interfaces back and forth. This was our old metric interface that, again, we got a lot of feedback on saying it's a bit complicated, a bit hard to use. Up here in my more action button, I can switch to the new metric interface from the old metric interface. And now it looks like the new interface. Or if I'm in the new interface and I want to switch back to the classic metric, I can do that. But since we've switched on this, which has been about a year, I don't think anybody wants to go back to the classic metrics. So I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over that. I would stay with this new metric interface. All right. Okay. Kevin asks a really good question. By adding these, do they count against your credit usage when you view the dashboards? Okay, there you go. Stacy is responding, credits count against ingest, not against dashboards. You can run something 100 times, doesn't bother anything. It's what you ingest into Sumo is what you get charged for. So once you get it in Sumo,
anything else would be diabolical.
Sorry? Okay. One little thing, I think, Stacy, though, the infrequent tier is an exception to that, correct? There we do charge by the run.
I would leave that to Thayer to answer.
Okay.
But credits in general count against your ingest of data, which you bring into Sumo, because that's when we're doing most of the load. And then when you do run the dashboards, that's where it counts more that it's hard to use like the infrequent tier with the dashboard. As far as I know, you might have to do something fancy.
Okay. But I wanted to be completely transparent.
Okay, sorry. Here we go. Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay. All right. So that takes care of, like I said, lab number 4. And again, this might be an excellent place for us to take a 10-minute break before we get into lab number 5 and talk about joining metric queries and all that sort of stuff. So I propose, ladies and gentlemen, that we take a nice little 10-minute break. In fact, if you'll just bear with me a second here, I am going to try to get someplace where I can get another tab open. And I can bring up my 10-minute timer. So when this timer gets down to 0, I'd like you all to be back. So please take a 9-minute and 54-second break, and we'll see you back here shortly. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, our 10-minute break is over, and hopefully we are ready to resume with lab number 5. So in lab number 5, we want to talk about joining metric queries and how we can play around and get some meaningful information out of our metric queries. So in lab number 5, they want us to open up a new metric window, right? And they want us to go ahead and grab a metric of net in bytes using the operators of rate and sum. So Sumo logic. By the way, if I want to, I can close all of these tabs by clicking on that more action button on any one of these tabs, and I can choose to close all tabs. And then we want to open up a new metric query. Now, again, I remind us that we're in basic mode, and in a few minutes I'll get into advanced mode, but we want to find our net in bytes. So I'll start typing NET. And of course, this time I'll actually click on it like an intelligent person there. There we go. And then on my filters, I'm going to leave this alone for right now. In fact, let me just go ahead and run it. So now I'm looking at the net in bytes of all of the different systems that I have. And I've got about like 864 systems that are feeding this. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to change my operators. So I want to do a rate, which is the change of, and I'm going to add another operator that says I also want to see the average, I believe. So rate and average, rate and sum, excuse me. I can't read. Let's make this rate and sum. And so when I run this, I'm seeing I've got now one record. And if I look at this, I'm looking at my net in bytes, the rate of change, the sum of this information. Now, I want to add a second query. If I see my in bytes, I'd like to see my out bytes. Hopefully that logically makes sense. So again, I'm going to type in net. This time I'm going to go with net out bytes. I want to compare my ins and outs, right? And again, I'm going to choose the same operators. Now we'll talk a little bit more about rate and sum and all that stuff in just a little bit. So bear with me if the rate thing didn't make sense. So here I am seeing in one color, and by the way, it might be easy to turn my panels here. So there's my net out bytes. Here's my net in bytes. And again, I can now see them both, and they're kind of overlapping each other and all that fun stuff. Okay. By the way, up here, you can also turn off, if you want to, on the query, your results. Now I've got to display something, so I can't turn them both off, but I can choose if I want to turn them off here. And you notice it doesn't make them available in the legend. So if you want to hide something in your query, you certainly could do that. Now, the reason we're doing this is I want to see the difference between my ins and my outs, right? My input versus my output. So I'm going to create a third query. Only there are some types when you're doing a query that basic mode isn't going to work for you. There's certain functions, certain operators, certain things where we need to be in advanced mode. So on my third query, I'm going to click on the more action button over here, and I'm going to flip it to advanced mode. And then here in my query, rather than referencing and typing in a query, this is query B, this is query A, and I can, in advanced mode, do something like this. Hashtag B, it is case sensitive, minus hashtag A. And that, when I run this, will now give me a third result, which is being displayed in green, which is the difference between my input and my output. And as I mentioned, I could turn these off. So I'm only looking at my difference here. And again, it's interesting to know, things are pretty stable between my input and my output. And now all of a sudden something drastically changed. And the obvious question is, what changed? Why am I seeing a lot more network traffic difference between my ins and my outs here? Maybe I'm uploading large information files, update software. I don't know. But again, interesting to know. So this is how you and I can take a query and take another query, maybe the mirror query. So I've got my input, I've got my output, and then I can see the difference between the two. And so that's what we're trying to point out here. Okay. So that is basically that. Now, in order to do this equation, I had to go to advanced mode, okay? And so there are some functions and some filters and all stuff that you can only do in advanced mode. So, and I'll talk more about advanced mode here in just a little bit. So as I said, we disabled these, and now I'm just looking at my output, my difference. And again, I can add that to a dashboard if I want to. So I can turn this off, turn this off. I can send this to a dashboard, one of my new dashboards, and off to the races we go. Okay. And that, like I said, is lab 5, I believe. Now, this is where we get into the conversation a little bit about basic mode and advanced mode. To switch, it's fairly simple to switch one mode to another. And by the way, whatever mode you were last in, when I grab a new query, I was in advanced mode up here, it puts me in advanced mode. If I was in basic mode, it would have put me in basic mode. So again, it depends on what mode you're in. When you go and create another query or even another tab, it'll put you in that mode. When I go to new metric, I was in advanced mode. So it's going to open this up in advanced mode. I can flip it back to basic mode easily enough. Now, again, as I mentioned, a lot of our customers complained over a year ago that our metric interface and our metric queries are too complicated. And we listened. And that's what basic mode allows us to do. It allows us to select the metric, the filters, the operators that we want, and build the query very simply. And you'll find there's something we're doing with the log query in a similar manner. But sometimes we need the power and the flexibility of the advanced mode where we can actually just flat out write a query. And we can add operators and functions and things like that that maybe aren't available here. Okay. That brings us to lab 6, where we're going to talk about time series and again, doing things in the advanced query mode. So from lab 6 through 10, we're going to do things in the advanced query mode. We're not going to be dealing with basic mode anymore. So again, we're going to grab a new query. This should put us into advanced mode because the last mode I was in was advanced mode. So if I grab a new query, metrics, oops, I'm sorry, I guess it was in basic mode. I switched it back. My mistake. So let's go to advanced mode. But the point is, if you see where it says enter a metric query, you're in advanced mode. If you see drop downs for metrics and filters, you're in the basic mode. And you can very easily switch back and forth. Now, once you start populating and put things in there, it might be a little harder to switch. Okay, but everything we're going to do from here on out is going to be in advanced mode. So we can use all kinds of nifty operators. Top K, so I want to say top X time series. Bottom K, bottom X time series. Filter. Filter allows me to do some math functions, do filter stuff. And filter only works in advanced mode. So I'm going to grab here my content type of host metrics in advanced mode. So my content type equals host metrics And again, I'm going to go ahead and run that. And so now I'm seeing all the different host metrics I have, all the different metrics, all that sort of thing. If I look here, I've got a bunch of stuff. And again, some of this may be Jane Meredith or JWM, my host. Some of it might be other hosts. I can put my cursor on here and see who the collector is from. Or I can put my, again, cursor on here and I can see where this stuff is coming from. Okay. So back to my lab here for a second. Okay. Now, once I see all these host metrics, maybe I want to look for a specific source category. I don't want to see all of them. I want to see a specific source category. So again, notice I can click in here next to this. It says, okay, what other fields do you want? I want source category equal, and then I can find maybe my machine, and I'm going to run that. And so now it is showing me all of my host metrics from the source category, my disk, disk used. Probably these are memory and CPU usage are so low. Okay. And then if I want to focus on a particular metric, I can click here again, and I can say my metric equals, and I can pick a metric that I want. Maybe I want, let's go ahead and grab CPU user, how much the user is using my CPU. Okay. And apparently I have two values here. There's JWM, metric CPU user, and then this other blue line going across here. Come on. In the field, there we go. CPU user. Okay, host metric JWM. Okay. So yeah, I've got two different sources. I've got two different sources here that I'm feeding. So complicated answer, shouldn't really do that, but that's okay. So I can sit and specify that I want to see my CPU sys or my CPU whatever. Now, if I want to, I can do your typical log query type thing. I can type in here at the end of this a pipe, and I can say, you know what, I want to filter, and I want to filter where my min is greater than a value. And so obviously here I can take a value of 2. Min is greater than 2. And max is less than, let's make it 15 for right now. And I can run this and see how it runs. Okay. So now, again, I'm looking here. Now, as I start to shrink this down, I'll start to lose data. So if I make this 10, now all of a sudden I've lost all my data. So let me make it 12 here. But what happens is once it removes that metric, regardless of what that metric value is, if it's less than 12, it's going to filter it out. So I got rid of one of my 2 lines. So now I'm only filtering and seeing anything from 2 to 12. So you can filter out certain lines and certain data if you want to, based on a filter statement. Go back to 14 again. We go back to 15. There we go. I got both my lines back. So you can filter out some of this data if you want to and apply a filter, a range filter, if you will. Okay. And again, you can use like greater than 0, right? Or you can use greater than equal to 0 if you want it to be equal to 0 or greater than 0. Your choice. I can also do something like I want to filter based on the average is greater than a certain percentage. Now, my CPU sys is not going to get greater than 95%. So this is not a real good example for me. But in a server environment or something like that, if my average gets high, above 90% or whatever, maybe I want to create an alert. And we're going to talk about alerts in another couple labs down the road. Okay. So any questions there about lab 6? Let's move on to lab 7. we want to play with some AWS metrics, right? Part of our AWS observability. And I also want to make sure that you're aware of this lovely document that's in our labs. And the reason I want to point this document out is because, again, these are AWS services that publish CloudWatch metrics. And you might have a question or two that might reference, like, how many data points do we collect on CloudWatch metrics? And so you may have to go out here and look at these references to find the answer to that question. This is not on our site. This is on AWS's site. This is AWS's information. Okay. But you can, I can, we can take this code, as you know, probably from other classes, and I can create a new metric query, and I can go ahead, it's an advanced query, I can paste this information in. Now, question, it's surrounded by double quotes. Do I need the double quotes? No, I don't. I only need the double quotes if there's spaces in here. So if there's spaces in this line, then I do need the double quotes. I can do it without the double quotes. With the double quotes, doesn't make any difference. We're forgiving. And again, I can see the data that's here displayed. So here I'm looking at my advanced load balancer AWS metrics. Specifically, I can see how those metrics are doing. And of course, here I've got a lovely spike indicating something that I may want to investigate, look up, that sort of thing. By the way, I'm going to take this lovely URL and I'm going to copy it to the chat box because some of you may ask about it. For the test. Okay. That's what makes this test hard. There's a fair number of lookup in the documentation type questions. Now, I'm looking at my ALB metrics. And again, I've got lots of metrics here. So let's focus on a particular metric. Let's look at our 500 error counts, 5XX. So again, I can take this code, I can copy it, or better yet, I could just type in metric equals, and then I can see a long laundry list of metrics that I want. The beautiful thing about this redesign that we did about a year ago is I may not know what I've got, but here I can quickly see what I'm interested in. And then I can select that particular metric or that particular area of interest that I want to focus on for those drop downs. Much easier to use. Okay. And again, here I have a situation where I've got a query that I'm looking at the average of my 500 count. So let me go up here, throw in an average here. Can't remember if there's a pipe there or not. No, I think there's a pipe there. There we go. There we go. So this is the average of my 500 count. Now I want to grab another query that looks just like the first one. The only difference is I want to go back and compare it to 24 hours ago. So here it's basically doing a time shift of 1 day. So I can type in time shift 1D. Now it's interesting to know, I didn't type in minus 1D to go back a day. I typed in 1D, a positive number. So here I can see my value for today. I can see my value. This is my value for yesterday. And I can see how things change. And then again, I can do that B minus A if I want to see the difference. But there's obviously a whole bunch of functions, average, time shift, and other things that you and I can use, that you and I can use to get kind of the information that we want. And in this lab, we also want to point out that we have other applications like AWS load balancing. So I can type in AWS, ALB, ELB, and I've got these applications that you and I can install for our AWS Elastic Load Balancing if we want to. Here's our metrics. Okay. And again, I'm just going to save the time of installing that. You can install it if you want to. And again, if you run AWS, I highly encourage you to check out these apps. But it's not something that we need to do for other exercises. So, and again, remember these apps have pre-built queries that are already there out of the box for you to run. Saves you lots of time. Don't have to reinvent a bunch of queries. Off to the values we go. Now, that's going to take us to lab 8. And here we've got a totally different conversation piece to have. So I get to go back to my slides. Just bear with me a little bit here. And let's talk about metric formats. Different sources for my metrics put things in different formats. Now, you notice it says use case 3. I think I mentioned to you in the start of the class, we're going to talk about various use cases. So one of the use cases that we have here, and we talked about the use case of AWS, that was the previous use case, and the use case of getting your own host metrics, that was the previous use case. But here in use case 3, we want to talk about different metric formats, excuse me. So earlier we used a key value pair format, and that's what we prefer. We like key value pair, works great, lasts a long time. And you know what? Carbon 2.0 is key value pair. We like Carbon 2.0. We run natively on Carbon 2.0. But there's other formats that we have to support. So for example, when we get things from Kubernetes, it comes into a Prometheus. And in Prometheus, it basically defines the object here, the node, and then it defines the cluster, the node, the CPU, all inside of parentheses. And so we have to be able to convert from Prometheus into Carbon 2.0. Or in the case of Graphite, which is another format, it comes in dotted notation. So cluster.node, .cpu, .cpu metric, and then here's the value of it, and here's the timestamp. And so we have the ability within Sumo logic to convert from one metric format to another. And that is going to be what our conversation is about for this next lab. So we've got a metric rule editor that we can use to convert from one type to another. So let me stop my slides here for just a second. Let's go into lab 8, and we are going to convert metric types, okay? So here, I can, you can, we can take this metric type, which is in Graphite, I believe. Hang on. Yeah, Graphite, I was right. And we can create a new metric query. And in advanced mode, I can paste this in and I can run it and I can get my results. So this is in Graphite mode. Again, dotted notation, right? This is my app. This is my subassembly. This is my node. This is, you know, whatever. And I can get that value. Now, additionally, I can also use my key value pairs, and I can get the same information. So bear with me a moment. I see Max is at it again. Or this shouldn't last long. Type equals, and I believe I want bookings. And then I think it's, sorry. Metric equals success count. Good. All right. Helps if you spell properly. Success count. So it knows what the metrics are available based on this type. And if I run this, now that's interesting. That's very interesting. These two should match up perfectly. And I think the problem is I've got a bunch of different sources down here. That's why they're not matching up. Hang on a second. Make sure I didn't miss anything, but they should be identical. And again, I think what we have here is an issue where I've got a lot more sources under this booking type.
It looks like namespace. If you say namespace is
Yeah.
training, then it should. give
Yeah,
you a
okay.
thing.
Thank you. There you go. Thank you very much. Good. All right. Now to prove a point, I'm going to say I turn this one off. And so this one's on. I turn this one on, and then I'm going to turn this one on. And so as you can see, they're exactly correct. They lay over one another. So I can look at this one of two ways. So how did this happen? How do we get the chance to convert this, right? How does this magic here happen? Well, you and I can actually, hold on a second here. We can go in here and we can actually convert from one type to another. And I think that's a little later on in this exercise. But let me go ahead and talk about this travel logic demo usage here first. And here again, I've got my success count right here, right? My booking success count. I'm going to delete this one. And by the way, I'm going to change my time for 60 minutes. The reason being is that my failures don't occur all the time. And so I want to widen up my time here. And I'm basically going to do the same thing here. Type equals bookings. Metric equals, this time I want fail count. And this time I want namespace equals training again. And the point is that I'm looking at my successes versus my failures. Come on. Why am I not seeing something here? Hang on. Let's widen it up. I think I know why. Because they changed our demo. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Jared. Yep. The reason is that we've got a new demo environment where the stuff gets generated, and that got changed. So let's go back here for a long period of time. And again, let me go back even longer. Okay. My problem, there we go. Let's turn them both on. So again, I can see my one set of values. And I can see my other set values are down here at the bottom. So bottom line is that I really what would have happened had our data been right is I would have seen that, you know, here I've got successes, I'm positively booking travel, and I'm having issues, and then all of a sudden I have failures because of some problem. And so you can see and you can compare, you know, when I'm having successes, when I'm having failures. Obviously, when I'm having failures, I'm probably not going to have as many successes. And so that's really what they're kind of trying to show you here. Now, truth be told, and I'll need to go back and refresh those slides. The other thing is that I can also take advantage of my axes to display things across different axes, because it may not fit. Like, you know, my two axes are so skewed. So I can set myself up here as a dual axes type chart. So here in my axes override, I can say that I want item C to be on a different axis here. Hang on a second. Property, axis Y type. I want it to be on the right. And then I've also got to go back into my axes, and I've got to enable my right axis to make sure it's there. So now I've got my one chart and range over here on the left, and then my second axis I can put on the right to help tell a better story. But people need to be aware that I've got a new axis over here, and to read that data off that new axis. So a lot of times if your data is skewed, doesn't fit well on one axis, you can easily turn it into a two axis type display. Okay. And that's basically what I'm doing. Okay. Again, the time shift operator, right, allows us to shift the time in our query. And if I click on this, It's going to take me to my documentation where I can look up that time shift operator. And I believe there's probably a question or two on that time shift operator, at least one question, with regards to, positive numbers going back in days. Okay, so just want you to be aware of that and get that one right. Okay. We also have a rate of change operator, right? We want to look at maybe the count of something. And then if we want to see the change between two count values, that's the delta. But if we want to look at the rate of change, that would be the rate operator. So here on items 20, 21, and 22 of this lab, talking about using the different types of operators to see either the change, the delta, the difference in change, or the rate of change. And you can look at things that way. Okay. All right. Before I get into getting metrics from logs, I do want to mention to you, as I sort of briefly mentioned, and that is here under manage data, here under metrics, we have these metric rules that we can create to convert from one format to another. And so if I look at, for example, this travel logic graphite metric thing, my command starts with travel, and then it has, my node or my pod or my whatever. And we basically break this down as far as the format and the structure that it's in. Bear with me a second. This isn't looking the way I want it to look. Let me cancel this and go back into it again. There we go. So again, the first period here is my namespace. My second one is my node. My third one is my pod. My fourth one is my type. The fifth one is my metric. So as I'm going down through these stars. So that when it reads this line, it will translate it and pull out the node, the pod, the metric, the namespace, and make that available to me in key value pairs. So I just wanted to mention that to you in case you need to convert from one graphic type to another. Now, next lab up is about getting metrics from logs. And this is another powerful feature, another underutilized feature perhaps. You've got data coming in from logs. Does that data contain any metrics? Would you like to create those metrics while you're ingesting this? So how this works is that, again, under manage data, under metrics, we have this section called logs to metrics. And you and I and others can create a new log to metric query. And I can call this whatever I want to. So I'll call this JWM Apache log. That's what I'm going to go after here. So I call it logs to metrics. And then the scope is I'm going to specify that the source category, this is stuff coming in from my Apache access logs. And then down here, I'm going to take that parse expression and I'm going to copy it from here. So here is my parse expression. And this is a parse regex, a parse regular expression. And what it's doing is, again, it's parsing out some specific fields that I'm into. And when I run this and I look at the preview of my parsed expression, you can see our parsed expression has parsed out our get method, our refer, our size, our source IP, our status code, our URL, and hang on a second. Our user agent. And then there's our original message. Now, of these things, most of these are textual. They're not metrics, so I don't care about them. The only ones that are numeric are my size, my source IP, and my status code. But my source IP is broken up with decimal points, therefore it is text. So only two numeric ones I have to worry about are my size and my status code. So down here, when I go down here, I have to identify my numeric fields as either a metric or as a dimension. So on my size, is that something that I want to average, min, max, sum? Yes, it is. That represents a number that I want to aggregate and do various metric type operators against. But my status code is 200, 204, 304. Those are not something that I want to treat as a metric. I want to actually treat it as almost an attribute type thing, where it's going to tell me who, what, where, when, how, or in the case of this, it's going to be basically, what is my status code? So I want to treat that as a dimension, not as a metric. I don't want it to sum. I don't want the average. I don't want the min. I don't want it to max. And then down here, I can estimate the data points per minute. So when I click to estimate the data points per minute, it says, based on the last 60 minutes, how many time series I have. It tells me how many data points per minute it's going to generate from this rule. And I can also see what my current DPM that I'm currently purchased at and how many I have available. So this is an area, like I said, where a lot of customers, by virtue of their contract with Sumo, have lots of DPMs and probably lots of DPMs available, and they can probably convert some logs to metrics and bring in some more metrics that might help them. And it's probably already well within their budget. They probably have so many metrics available. Or if it's going to be close, again, before you save this that there could be an issue. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what this lab is about. And then I would automatically see, as this data gets ingested, this metric gets created, and I can run queries against this metric. So that's basically what's going on there. Any questions? Let's wrap it up then. Lab 10, monitoring metrics and dashboards using alerts. There's two approaches to this, although I say I've got a question in the chat box. Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Stacy. So here you can have a dashboard that displays things, and the network operations center, or somebody can monitor this. They can look at it, see outliers and all that fun stuff, right? That's one form of monitoring, right? Your network operations center has big old TV monitors around that they can see this. But another way that we want to do things is we may want to create an alert. And the good news is we've got some new alert capabilities here in Sumo Logic that you couldn't do this. I got an error saying, okay, Jared has something in chat here. I got an error saying it couldn't save your logs to metrics due to too many metric extraction rules. Max is 50. Okay, yep, that's probably true. And unfortunately, as you can see here, let me go back. Here. Discard changes. I've got a bunch of log to metric rules here. So yeah, we got to clean this up. Okay. A lot of these things here that we need to probably minimize and take care of and stuff. When we teach classes, when I teach a class, obviously I show this off. And quite frankly, I probably should delete that logs to metrics, right? I should clean up after myself. So that's the problem you're having, Jared. Apologize for that. So back to the conversation here about metric monitors. So here under manage data, here under monitoring, you and I can create monitors. And these monitors can be based on logs, they can be based on metrics, they can be based on all kinds of things. Now, I can add a folder here if I want to and organize my metrics into a folder. So if I'm dealing with an AWS environment, maybe I want to put all my metrics for that AWS environment in that folder, okay? I can organize things in folders if I want to. Otherwise, they're going to be here at the raw level, at the base level, and I can see the status indicators of whether they're normal, whether they're critical. I can see if they're at warning levels. I can see basically what's going on. Now, how do I create these? Under add, there's a new monitor option. And so here I can either say I'm going to run a log query or a metric query. And obviously we're going to run a metric query. By the way, I can be in basic mode or I can be in advanced mode. But since I'm in basic mode here, I'm going to take advantage of this. And I'm going to say, I want to look at my CPU usage. CPU total. And again, I would see a lot of different hosts, but I'm going to specify a particular source category. That source category equaling hang on. Source category equals, come on, there you go. And hopefully I see my host. So I'm looking at one particular host. And so now I'm seeing here is my CPU utilization. So I have written a query to define basically what structure I like. Now, something that they just recently added, I can do this based on a static query, or I could also do it based on an outlier. And so basically it's going to look at my outlier functionality to see if I'm determining things are starting to get out of bounds and stuff like that. Your CPU utilization should be pretty constant. And so I can either use a static type model or an outlier type model here if I want. That's something they just recently added. And then the question is, do I want to alert on? Do I want to alert if there's missing data? If I've got any data that's missing, aka this host is down, yeah, scream, tell me there's a problem, whatever. And by the way, when I recover, it will also tell me that we're back, right? So it's nice to know to tell me you got a problem, but it's also really nice to tell me we're back, all is working. I can also set a warning level. Now, really, in the case of a CPU, I would probably set a warning level at maybe 80 or 90%. In this case, I never get above 80 or 90%, really. So in my case, maybe I'd want to send it to 10%. Not realistic, but it'll get the job done. So I can specify that I want it to be at 10% continuously for a certain period of time. And then again, I can have it notify me when we recover based on that value. Now, the reason I'm questioning things here is I expected the color of this to change. And then I can say I want an alert when I get above a certain value. So right now that value is set to 0. Maybe I want it to alert me when I get up to 40% over a period of 5 minutes. So again, I'm looking to see if I'm above 40% here. And it's funny, this should change to reflect where I am. Okay. So you define up here your missing data values, your warning values, and your criticality values. Then down here, you just said, okay, I want to send out some notifications. What kind of notifications do I want? Do I want to create an email? Do I want to send something through Datadog? Do I want to create a webhook? What is it that I want to do? How do I want to communicate this? And so you might want to just initially create an email. Who do I want to send this to? My network operations center at sumologic.com or whatever. And then when do I want them? Can't spell Sumo Logic, sorry. There. Oops. Here in the football scholarship, sorry, folks. Here I can put my subject line in, and there's a bunch of variables here that I can use to provide the monitoring type, the query information, the results, all of that fun stuff. I can actually type in the message that I want. And then most importantly, I decide under which criteria is this message going to fire. So I might add a warning, or if I'm not displaying any data. So if I'm no data, and maybe I want to create a warning here to let the network operations center know. Maybe I want to add a second notification when things get really bad to my another operations center, or my secondary operations center, or whatever. So you can define how you want to let people know. Then all you have to do is name the monitor, save it, and off to the races we go. And that's all there is really to creating a monitor. And again, this is all stuff that we've recently added based on our customer feedback, based on your suggestions. So you can create these. Again, you can organize them in folders. One other thing, you can also import them. We have the ability, all of our alerts are done in JSON. So you can actually import a JSON alert if you want to. In fact, when we do our AWS observability, not only we bring in dashboards and Explorer stuff, and we bring in a bunch of alerts that you can access and import into here if you want to. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, takes care of lab number 10. Lab number 11 is a simple cleanup lab. So if you did install a collector, I'm sure that you probably after today don't want to start sending your host information to Sumo Logic anymore. You did it for the class, that's great, appreciate it, but you probably don't want to do it anymore. And so if you did, all you have to do is two things. One, you want to go into manage data in the training environment under collection. You want to find your collector. And you want to delete that collector. So you can go up here, find your collector, click delete, and it's gone. That takes care of the collector, it takes care of the sources. Now, the other thing you want to do though, is you also probably want to uninstall the collector that's on your machine. So if you're on a Mac and you go into your Finder under Applications, you'll see there's a Sumo Logic Collector folder, and in there is a Sumo Logic Collector uninstall app that you run, and it will uninstall that. Pretty simple. If you're on a Windows environment, all you got to do is go into your Windows control panel, choose to uninstall a program, right-click the Sumo Logic Collector, and uninstall that. And that's all there is to it. And ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much concludes the course. So what questions have you? What questions do you all have before I get you ready to take your certification exam? All right, then. Let's prepare for the certification exam. What I'd like you all to do is you're in the training environment here in Sumo Logic, and I would like you all to log out of the training environment. Why? Because you're logged in as training admin with some crazy number. You're not logged in with your name, right? So if this person takes the test, that's going to get the credit, not you, by your name. So please go in here and log out of our training environment. Then I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. If you don't have a company Sumo Logic environment, there is a way, there's this lovely URL that you can use, and you can sign up for a demo and you can play with it. So if you need a Sumo Logic environment, please click here. That's in the chat box. Now, but I want you to log in, and most of you have already taken some of our exams, so I assume that you've got an environment to log into. Now I'm going to go ahead and log into my environment here. And I'm going to log in as me. So when I look down here, if my navigation panel is not open, I can open it up. And I see that I'm logged in as John Meredith. And then to take the exam, as most of you are probably aware, you get to click on the Home tab, click on Certification, click Get Certified. Now, when you click Get Certified, if it doesn't take you into this LMS, the problem isn't a problem at all. It's actually a security feature. We have a fiduciary duty to not let you go from one environment to another without your permission. So if you click on this, you get this. There's an easy fix for that. The easy fix is you're going to go into your Sumo Logic navigation panel. You're going to click on Help. You're going to click on Community, which is going to try to take you to the community site. And you'll get a panel here that says, we need your permission to be able to do this, or verify your email, or some button on there that says like verify email. And when you click on that, within a minute, you're going to get an email. In that email is also a button that says verify your email or whatever. You click on that, and now this problem suddenly goes away. It'll never happen again. So now, as I said before, when you go click on Home, Certification, get certified, it's going to take you into our LMS. And here, by the way, in our LMS is where we keep the passwords. So when we change our password in October, you'll be able to see that right here. Okay. And you'll see we've got a whole bunch of tiles for all of our different certifications. Now, the certification tile that you want is Metric Mastery. If I click on Metric Mastery, here's a self-paced course that you can take if you like. You don't need to. Here's the Metric Mastery exam in English. And here's the Metric Mastery exam in Japanese. Now, before I play with these exams, I want to point something out to you. Over here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile. And your profile keeps track of all the exams that you've taken and all the exams that you've passed. So you can go into your profile at any time and you can view your certificates. You can make sure they're added to your LinkedIn profile, and you can do all kinds of fun and wonderful stuff here. Now, there's a very important reason why I bring this up. So let me click done to go back here for a minute. So when you want to take this exam, this Metric Mastery exam, you click on it and there's a little button here to register. So let's register and poof, that's that. By the way, from here, I don't want you to follow and click along with me. I want you to wait just a minute. So when I go in here, I say before I start, yes, this exam has 30 questions. I got 60 minutes to complete it, right? It's open book, open notes. I can even ask the instructor. That's true, right? Questions are going to come and fill in the blank, matching text, single choice, et cetera, et cetera. And the passing score is a little higher than the new exams we just came out with. It's 75. So here's my instructions. I now click next. I now go in here. There is my 60-minute counter, 1 hour. I can start scrolling down, or I can click start assessment. Once I start seeing questions, my counter starts to count down. So what level of alerts can I set up in Metric Monitor, right? I've got warning, critical, and missing data. What's the difference between logs and metrics, right? Logs, numeric measure? No, I don't think so. Records of events that occur, while metrics and numeric measurements collected over time as source. So I think I like that one best. I'm just going to answer these 2 questions, which means that I'm probably going to fail. In fact, I know I'm going to fail. So let me scroll to the bottom. Let me click submit my answers. And it told me, yes, John, you did not pass. And I can click here, show my detailed results, and I can see the questions I got right, the questions I got wrong. But here's the biggie. Here's why I told you to do this. When you take the exam and you answer all the questions and you passed and you are really proud of yourself, and I'm proud for you, don't forget to click this close course button, because by clicking this close course button, it writes it to your profile. If you don't click this close course button, the exam did not happen. It's not stored in your profile. So please don't forget to click this close course button. I wish the system did this automatically, but it doesn't. There's a mechanical button that you've got to click on. And that's the reason I went in here, and that's the reason I explained all this. All right, I want to make sure you get credit for taking your exam. Are there any questions about the certification exam, the certification process, where things are? Anything else I can help you with? All right, let me stop. Well, actually, before I stop the recording, let me go back to streaming video for a second here. And let me thank you all for spending the last 3 hours with me, last 2 hours and 5 minutes. But if you take the test, you'll be sticking around with me a little bit longer. So thanks a lot for attending. And we hope to see you again in the session real soon. Again, we got lots of good sessions today and tomorrow. Please take advantage of them. Additionally, as some of you are aware, just bear with me a second while I go to one more slide here. Should be here at the end. There it is. We've got some other trainings coming up and regional trainings. So for those of you in Europe, we've got some cert jams coming up on the 19th and 20th. Thank you very much. Or in the Western and Central US, we've got some cert jams at a time that might be attractive to you. And since I'm the East Coast instructor, I've got some cert jams there to teach on the East Coast, as well as some in the Asia Pacific region. So again, anything we can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I think you have my contact information. Otherwise, thanks a lot for being with us today. I know Stacy mentioned you guys are a great group. We appreciated your questions. And I second that and say that you guys have been a lot of help. And please feel free to reach out and keep in touch. Most importantly, have fun at Illuminate. So hopefully next year we'll get to do this face to face. And I look forward to meeting you all. That's it. That's all I've got. I am going to stop my video. I am going to stop my sharing. I'm going to stop the recording.